Hi everybody, what am I doing? Well, I'm back down in the shop and I'm making French rolling pins. And I got a mess here. And what I do, I start with scraps and some reclaimed wood. Some of my pieces came from pallets, and I glue the scraps up. All my rolling pins will be between 15 and 17 inches long. I square it up to 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. I'm using a mixture of woods here. I've been using oak, walnut, and cherry, and some maple. Didn't have much maple in the way of scraps. And you want to make sure, if you're going to do something like this, that you get a good glue up job. When you mill this stuff, you want it as perfect as you can get it so that the seams here are as tight as possible. In fact, you don't want any seams. You want it like a solid piece. You're working with foodstuffs and you don't want food to get down in the cracks and get rotten, spoil, and get full of germs. So that was the first thing I did. And then, if you'll come over here with me, I made a pattern. Now, as you can see, I've been making some. And this is the pattern. This is a Vega, there you go, Vega Duplicator. And first thing you got to do is make a pattern. Now, with a rolling pin, one side is supposed to be the same as the other side. So you actually got two sides. You start in the middle here and you got two sides. And one side should be exactly the same as the other. Well, how do you do that? Well, I'll show you. So what you do is you draw half your pattern. And this is real simple. You probably already know this. Then you fold it over. In fact, you'd fold over on the back side. You fold it over like so. And then you cut it out. And I'll just whack this up real quick. Now when you open it up, both sides are exactly the same. Then you take a piece of hardboard, you put it on this, and you cut it out, and you've got the pattern like was over on my Vega. So, got the pattern made, I got the glue up started. Well, then I turn it, you saw that over there on the Vega. And then I sand it, and I usually start with 60 grit, move up to 80, 120, 150, up to 220. And before I get to 220, it really looks smooth, but before I get to 220, I take Robert's wood, laminate, and vinyl putty, and I fill all the grain, as you can see on this one here. You can kind of see it on there. It's about the same color. But I fill all the grain. Now it's still on my lathe at that time. And then I finish it off with 180 and 220 again. The idea is to fill all the pores in the wood. Then after I get done, I treat it with linseed oil. Why linseed oil? Because linseed oil is food safe. And I try to put about 3 or 4 coats on this till it's got a good, this one's only got 1 coat on it so far. And it's just a matter of wiping it on there and letting it dry, and wiping it on and letting it dry. And you wind up with something that looks pretty much like this. I do fill the ends, as you can see, for my tool marks, the spindles over on the lathe. So, let's go over to the lathe and do a couple of demonstrations. Not a lot, just a couple. Okay, this is one that I've already cut down on my Vega. This is a Vega, I'll show you here, Vega Duplicator. And I'll show you how that works in just a little bit. I've already shaped this one. on the lathe here. It's already shaped. And what I'm doing now is I filled it. As you can see down here, the filler's dry. It's set overnight. And now I'm sanding it. And when I sand it at very high speed. You just turn it on. You just keep sanding it like that until all the excess filler is sanded off. See, I still got a few spots here I got to do. And when you get that done, and I'm sanding with 220, when you get that done, then you got to sand this way. Got to remove all the little sanding marks as it goes around. And this is the way to sand with, this is sanding with the grain, see? When you sand like this, you're sanding opposite the grain, and it leaves little sanding marks all over it. And this is what takes the time. I'll probably sand on this for 20 minutes or so, maybe even, depending on how bad it is, a half hour. But that's what it takes. Then after that, put linseed oil on it, and I'll show you what that looks like here in just a minute. Now, how much time do I have in doing one of these? Well, if I'm just doing one up, I'd probably have, I don't know, 3 hours in doing one, start to finish, not counting the glue up time. But I'm not. I'm making as many as I can from the scraps I've got. That's the only thing that limits how many I make. And I had enough scraps this time to make 4. So how much time does it take to make 4? I think I got less time, a little less time, probably 2 hours and 15 minutes in each one of them. Big time is milling the scraps down, getting them sized, cutting it down to 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 on the table saw, getting over here, lathing it down to shape, sanding it, starting with a 60, 80, 120, 150, 180, 220, and then sanding it this way, and then putting linseed oil on it. And I'll show you each of that process. Okay, I finished sanding this. I got all the little scratch marks out, all that I'm going to get out anyway. And now I'm going to put boiled linseed oil on it. And you know, that's real easy to do. You just take a rag, wet it up with linseed oil, turn the lathe on. This one here happens to be oak, white oak, and cherry. I love cherry. Boy, when you cut cherry, it smells so sweet. Oh, it just smells so good. I like to think by doing this, it kind of burnishes the oil in. And I actually hold it tight enough where it gets hot. When I take it off, I'm going to fill the ends where the tool marks are. Okay, here's my square stock. I want to get it in there good and tight. You bring your Vega over here like so. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see a little better. Okay, I've got the center of my piece marked here with a line. Now the flat is going to be the thickness of the finished product. So what we're doing, we're cutting off the corners and making it round. I drop my tool in here like so, and then this is what follows the pattern, this little pin right here, and I set that up to where it just touches the pattern. And then as you move the cutter back and forth, why, this pin will follow the pattern. Now I have to make several cuts. I'm going to get it round first. Do that at a very slow speed to knock off the corners, and as I get it more round, well, then I'll start speeding it up. Now I always wear leather apron, and I do wear a face shield as well. You know, I figure it's a lot safer. If a piece would come off, well, maybe the leather apron will keep it from going through me. These aren't that expensive, they're welder's aprons. And I don't know whether it's necessary or not. I've never had a piece come off my lathe, but you know, why take the chances? All right, I don't know whether you'll be able to hear this or not, but anyway, I'm going to back it off to where it's just going to cut a little bit. Lock this down, roll it here to the end, turn my lathe on and slow it down, and then start cutting. Now this right here is a stop, and you can tell how much you're going to cut off by the stop. Now I just barely taken any off. Now if you move it down to here against this, it won't move, okay? So what I do is I back it off, and I take about 1/8 of an inch at a time. I think with the Vega you can take a lot more than that. I just don't like to. It gets pretty aggressive, and if your wood would have a tendency to split, taking a big chunk off is going to make it split. Back this off about 1/8 of an inch, loosen this up, tighten it down so we don't have any movement, turn her on, and go back the other way. See, 1/8 of an inch is even pretty aggressive. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'll get it down to round, and then we'll come back and I'll show you some more. Now, one thing when you set up the Vega, when you mount it on your lathe, you got to make sure that this edge here is the same distance here as it is down here. Otherwise, if this is in crooked, why, your piece won't be the same width from one end to the other. Does that make sense? I hope it does. You'll be cutting along an angle like this, and that's not good. I see there's a bad piece in that wood, unfortunately. We're almost round. When I get to be round, I'll show you what's next. We're now round, and my pattern guide right here should be touching the pattern, and it is. See? So that means the pattern is set up correctly to the diameter that I want this to be. So all I got to do now is I keep adjusting it down, and I'll start in the middle and go this way and then that way, and I keep taking this off, and it'll start out, it won't take anything off, and then as I move across, why, it'll move in automatically, trim her down to shape it, the right shape. So we'll start here, and when I get to this point I start taking off less, and I only take off about 1/16 at a time. So let's get her started up. You watch this, I don't know if you can see it or not, I'll zoom in a little bit. Boy, it'll follow the pattern. Now it stopped following the pattern here as the pattern moves in more, because I've only gone so far here. Otherwise I'd be taking off probably 5/16, and I don't want to take off that much. And we'll come back and go the other way. I draw a line on my pattern so I know where the center is, and of course I had a line on this when I set it up to set it in the center, so I'm cutting equal on both sides. Now to make sure everything is right, now is a good time to measure both ends to make sure that I was really square on the machine. So I'm going to get something to measure it here. Got a set of calipers. It's just a tad thicker on that end. So what I need to do here is to set my pattern in just a little bit on this end. Or bring this end out, one or the other. And I've got my pattern marked. I've got a little mark. It looks like it might have slipped in just a little bit. So I'll loosen it up and bring it out just a little bit, and then it won't cut so deep on this end. Well, we'll get back to cutting. And there's no use you watching me finish the cutting, but we'll come back when I start sanding. Okay, I've got it down to where it looks like basically the shape I want. And now I'm going to start sanding with 80 grit paper to get all these little marks and lines out. Do 80, 60, 120, 150, 180, and 220 for the final. Okay? So again, you've already seen this, so I'll just start sanding here away. Well, the crack didn't completely come out. Almost. There's just a little bit left. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to fill it with Quickwood. It's an Epoxy Repair, and you know, you've probably seen this before. There's two colors. You take those and you work it together till you got one color. You just keep working it in your fingers like this till it turns kind of a light tan. You can't see any more white. This stuff sets up pretty quick, so I think that's about it. There's a little hole, I'll fill it. By going across the crack instead of with the crack, why, it forces the putty down into the crack. And that's what you want. And this stuff is actually, it'll get harder than the wood, and it won't come out. You can feel it getting hot in your fingers, so I don't think I've got any more spots. The crack disappears there on the end, so it was almost all gone. Now, that should do it. Okay, this is my Roberts wood, laminate, and vinyl putty. And as you can see, I'm using light. That's because of the oak. I'm not really worried about it coloring the walnut, because the walnut is such tight grain. I don't have to worry about it. But I really think the oak need to fill the grain. You know, keep foodstuffs out of there. It's a real simple process. Pretty much done by hand. Put it on there like that and just rub it across the grain. You know, it'd be a lot easier to go down and buy some 8/4 maple 2x4, cut it in half, have 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 square piece, or 2 inch by 2 inch, and not have to worry about filling the grain and gluing it together and all that other stuff. But I just think the uniqueness of having more than one kind of wood makes them special. So the extra added effort of making sure that I mill the wood originally real good, that I fill the grain, and all the extra things that I have to do, I think it's worth it to have it, when you spin it, have it doing that. I don't know, just something about it. Now there's probably somebody out there going to say, oh, that's dumb, but I don't care. I never claimed to be the smartest frog in the pond. Is that a real saying? Smartest frog in the pond? I don't know. This stuff dries real quick. My epoxy putty needs an hour to dry. So I'm going to have to let this set for about another 30 minutes before this is workable. This is getting really dusty, so I'm putting my mask on. The French rolling pins are done. I've got 4 coats of linseed oil on them, and I think they turned out real nice. I got the ends finished off, got the shop cleaned up as much as I'm going to clean it up. You know, a working shop should be a little dirty. By that I mean some sawdust hanging around. But let's take a closer look at them so you can see what they look like. Well, they're not all alike. The 2 outside ones here are a little shorter. This one's a little fatter. I started with 2-inch stock on that one instead of 1 3/4. Same way with this one. It was 2-inch stock. But I think they turned out real nice. And I shaped them a little differently. This one here, the ends aren't as much tapered. And neither is this one. These two, the ends are pretty tapered. I think my favorite one's this one over here. You can see the quarter sawn maple there. It's got nice grain in it. Comes through on the other side as well. The walnut and the oak looks nice. This walnut here had some sap grain in it, so it's different, but I don't think it's quite as nice as the without the sap grain, but it makes it look like there's maybe 3 or 4 different kinds of wood. And then this one here, that's white oak and cherry. You can do this, and I think they'll make nice gifts. I made my wife one, oh, not too long ago. I made it out of solid walnut, and she likes it. She thinks it rolls out dough better than a regular rolling pin. So anyway, that's how you do it. This is the Vega. This is the model D36. I've had it for several years. Believe me when I tell you, it's more than paid for itself. I've made enough chair spindles and bedposts, etc., that it has much more than paid for itself over the years. So I highly recommend it. Plus you get the satisfaction of knowing that those chair spindles and those bedposts you made yourself. Hey, thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up. You know, thumbs up are important. That changes the algorithm on YouTube. The more thumbs up you get, why the better views you get. So I appreciate it. Appreciate you watching. In the meantime, keep those spindles turning.